We're live.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ben Chandler, and this is the May 2021 meeting of the Kentucky State Board of Elections. We're once again meeting by Zoom. We hope to, at some point in the very near future, renew our meetings in person. I think everybody is excited about the possibility of seeing each other and getting back into the swing of things. We've got a lot of hopefulness, I think, that we're seeing everywhere. And I know there'll be smiles all around when that happens. I'd like to call this meeting to order and have the members of the Board of Elections basically say hello and introduce themselves and indicate their presence. And I will start from the left on my screen, and the first one I see is Lynn Lane. Lynn?
Good morning. I'm Lynn Lane. I'm the retired clerk from Ballard County. Retired county clerk from Ballard County.
Thank you. Dwight Sears.
Morning, Dwight Sears, member, Pulaski County.
Corey Skolnick.
Morning, Corey Skolnick, member, Jefferson County.
Sherry Whitehouse.
Good morning, Sherry Whitehouse, member, Bullitt County.
Jerry Johnson.
Good morning, Jerry Johnson, member of Franklin County.
Deanna Brangers.
Good morning, Deanna Brangers, member, Jefferson County.
And James Lewis.
Good morning, James Lewis, retired county clerk, Pulaski County.
And we've got with us our Secretary of State, Michael Adams. Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning, everybody.
We've also got with us Jared Deering, the Executive Director, and his number 2 in command, Karen Sellers. We've got Rachel Pointer, and let's see, Taylor Brown and Sheila Walker and Tom Watson, all of the State Board of Elections staff. And we've got our representative of the County Clerks Association in Kentucky, Mr. Chris Cockrell. Mr. Cockrell, good morning to you.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody this morning.
Did I miss anybody? Has that got everybody? All right, very good. We'll start by approving the minutes, reading and approving. Better to approve than to read. So I'll take a motion if anybody wants to approve the minutes.
I've got two
motion.
changes to suggest.
All right, Mr. Secretary, go right ahead.
Thank you. First on page 2, top paragraph, middle sentence, it says, Secretary Adams added there is more clarification that the clerk is the custodian of the form. That's accurate for filings for local office, not for state office. So could we just add, is the custodian of the form for filing for local office?
Any objection to that change? Hearing none, so ordered.
And then the middle of page 4, Secretary Adams stated that the governor has done a great job helping us get federal grants. Actually, that's the Secretary of State that gets the federal grants, but the governor's done a great job getting us state matches of federal grants. So could we just add the words, done a great job helping us match federal grants, change the word get to the word match?
Any objection to that change? Hearing none, so ordered. With those changes, do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
A motion by member Johnson. Do I have a second?
Yes, I second that.
Second by member Lane. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Very good. Minutes are approved, and we'll move on to Ms. Pointer, who will give us some information about our financial situation. Ms. Pointer.
Good morning, everyone. So page 6 is just a statement of our general fund expenses, operating expenses.
you'll see in April that they're a little higher. That's because our fourth quarter payments did come out, so those will appear a little higher, and those will be the final quarterly payments for FY21. Pages 7, 8, and 9 are the statements of our remaining federal grants by transaction. There is, I realized on page 10 that I had left out a 1 on the state match spent to date. That should be corrected to $1,114,675. We do have a few counties that are in the finalization of sending us back their unused CARES money. And after confirming with the Election Assistance Commission, we will only keep in mind that we will only pay the state match on the actual amount of federal expenses that were expended. So we have confirmed with EAC, once we close the grant, the state match requirement will be of the total federal funds spent. Those have changed. We fully expected to expend those, but they have changed as counties have returned their unused CARES funding. So we will take care of that when we close the grant. So right now we are, after what we have returned has processed, we still have a few counties that will show up on next month's statement, but it is a remaining state match balance of $39,290.54, which we fully anticipate to have taken care of in June at the end of this fiscal year. Page 12 is, oh, I skipped a page. I'm sorry. Page 11 is the remaining balance that we have of our coronavirus relief funds. We have talked to OSBD and they have extended our expenditure date to the end of fiscal year 21, so June 30th. So we do have some remaining time and plans to spend some of those remaining funds. Page 12 is your summary of all remaining balances and accounts. And I did want to make a note, starting on page 13 through page 15, I went and added all of the individual transactions. I had previously been giving you the interest of each account. I added the transactions to get a true cash balance of those remaining accounts. And that will reflect everything that we have paid and brought in interest. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions? Anybody? You all have looked over the financials and have apparently found them to be all in order and easily understandable. Thank you, Ms. Pointer, for that report. And we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is setting the rates for the expenses of precincts. Mr. Deering, I will turn that over to you to explain, if you don't mind, sir.
All right, absolutely. So the State Board of Elections serves as a pass-through for funding to the counties for both precincts expense costs and registration and new registrant costs as well. I'll have Rachel kind of give you a little bit of the numbers. However, I want to give a little bit of a primer to this and remind the board that these rates were set by the legislature in 1974. So these rates are as old as I am, and obviously inflation has gone up over that period of time considerably. I think gasoline was roughly 60 cents a gallon when I was first born. So obviously things have changed since then. And unfortunately, the rates that the legislature has reimbursed the counties for election costs have not changed. So I'll have Rachel kind of dive into what the numbers are as we've been provided the funding. And then if the board wants to have a little bit more of a discussion about that issue specifically, we can do that. Rachel?
When we last did the biennial budget, which set the fiscal year budgets for 20 and 21, we requested that we be able to pay the maximum for new voter registration, which was 25 cents. That was granted. We also asked for the maximum to be reimbursed for new per registered voter, which is their reimbursement of personnel. We did receive funding to use the maximum amount of those, which was 50 cents per registered voter. We also asked that they be increased from $200 per precinct to $255, which was approved. And so at this point for FY, they approved and allocated funds for us for FY21 and FY22 at the maximum rates. The only thing that we did want to note is that this year in FY21, at the time of biennial budget, they did estimate how many registered voters we would have. We did have more registered voters in FY21 than they had anticipated. So going forward in the next biennial budget, which will be done this fall, we will reflect those numbers, the higher numbers. Jared, do you have anything else to add?
No, if there's any board members that have any questions or concerns about that, my recommendation to the board would be to do something that we did similar a year and a half ago, roughly prior to the pandemic, which is when the legislature passed these funds down to us to provide to the counties. We sent a letter to leadership within the legislature, just pointing out the fact that these funds were set in 1974 and that inflation costs have gone up, election costs have gone up. We're asking the county clerks to do a lot with very little, and they do an incredible job at that. But I think it's still appropriate if we push the legislature appropriately in a small way, just to say, hey, just we want to continue to keep this on your mind as that, while yes, we appreciate the money that you're providing for us to send out to the counties, we would request that it would be more reflective of current costs and rates.
Jared.
Member Lewis.
Yes. I think state board should do whatever we can to encourage the General Assembly to give a realistic reimbursement per cost of the state share. I know it's at least $2,000 a precinct. I'm sure it may have went up the last survey I did on it a few years ago was that $2,000 per precinct cost, and clerks are getting and fiscal courts getting reimbursed $200, now $255. That's pittance to, and I just think this legislature needs to be pushed as far as the board can push them, and hopefully the Clerks Association to at least give the counties a respectable amount of reimbursement on the election cost.
Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if the board feels is appropriate if we work with Chris Cockrell and the KCCA. I know last time we sent this letter, it was signed by the members of the State Board of Elections. I'm wondering maybe this time if we kind of double those efforts and see if the KCCA would also not be interested in joining maybe a joint letter to the legislature.
Well, we have this discussion, I guess every year or every other year, whenever this comes up, it's always the same. As you say, it's been since 1974 that the rates have been increased, and we're always short of money. So I think maybe it would be appropriate to try some kind of new tack. Mr. Cockrell, do you have any thoughts on the best way to go about getting money to the clerks, or are the clerks sufficiently, do you all have plenty of money?
I appreciate the humor on a Tuesday rainy morning. Obviously, I would want to say thank you to the State Board of Election for their timeliness on sending out the funding. So I received mine last week, talked to several other clerks, and they have received theirs. So the timeliness we appreciate, but obviously, as James Lewis has made us aware, it's it's not a respectable rate. In fact, it's almost insulting by the amount of effort and time and work that the clerks put in on this. It's not even close to matching what really needs to be done. So yes, we would wholeheartedly support a new tactic, and we would go and enforce with at this point, we would just about go with anybody to make this happen. So yes, we would be glad to join with State Board of Election for this.
Could I add a quick comment?
Yes, Mr. Secretary.
Thanks. I agree with everything Jared said and Chris said. I would just add that I've received assurances from legislators who were sponsors of House Bill 574 that they want this to be a success and they're willing to put money behind it. What they don't know and couldn't figure out in time to address in this session, in this budget they just passed, is more money needed, and if so, how much? It may be that some counties get a cost savings out of this bill. I was in Crittenden County a couple of weeks ago. The local officials there told me they expect to save about $60,000 under this bill, which is a lot for a county with 4,000 people and 2,000 voters. In the Danville paper a couple of days ago, they are estimating to save six figures. So I don't want that fact to counter against the argument, which I agree with, that it's time for these rates to be increased. It's been, 30, 40 years. So we're overdue for that. But I don't think that we're going to get anything until the legislature gets a better sense of how much, and it might be different by county, depending on how many have saved money under the bill and how many haven't. So all that to say, I support this idea. I'm happy to sign any letter myself too. But I do think it will be helpful for the counties to assess what their real costs are and what cost savings, if any, should be countered in to that. And then let's all come back in January and try to get some more money from the legislature.
Any other thoughts on this subject? Mr. Deering, what action do we need to take today?
What I would say is for the board to direct staff to draft a letter, to work with the KCCA and President Cockrell within that process, to work with Secretary Adams within that process, and ultimately, what we would probably do is either A, we can wait until the next board meeting to have the full board vote on the actual document itself, or the board can create a subcommittee, maybe perhaps the legal committee that already pre-exists with Chairman Chandler and Member Skolnick to approve that. But either one of those would be more than appropriate, I think.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that? It certainly suits me to go ahead along those lines. Anybody?
So moved.
All right, we've got a motion from Member Johnson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Member Lewis. Any discussion about what we're going to do? Put a group together and inform staff, get staff to put a letter together, working with Secretary of State and with the County Clerks Association, and have a subcommittee work on the rates. Very good. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Very good. Motion passes, and we will move on along those lines. Now we'll move to Mr. Cockrell from the County Clerks Association. Chris, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. I really appreciate being here today, and thank you all for the support you all are offering our counties, especially with what the motion just passed. It doesn't go unnoticed, and we do appreciate that. Just give you a short update. We're continuing to get prepared for the election coming up in 2022. A lot of counties are actively looking for new election equipment. Obviously, that's going to be a burden and a cost for the counties. So once again, it's very helpful to have some funding from the state, federal level. So I want to say thank you for that. Also, just want to extend an invitation to all members on the State Board of Election. The KCCA is having their June conference in Louisville, And I wanted to extend an invitation for you all. It's in person, and we would like to just recognize each and every one of you all for the hard work and support that you all give us. So if you would like to join us, our dates are June 20th or 21st and 22nd. So we would love to have you all. It's in Louisville at the Marriott downtown. So if you want to, please reach out, and we'd love to have you on a list.
That'd be great. Thank you so much, Chris. And we certainly appreciate all the work the county clerks put in, crucial to our election process. I would encourage any members who possibly can to show up and get to know as many county clerks as they can. That's a good thing to be involved in. So keep us posted, Chris, on best times and if there are any particular events that we need to come to, or that you're going to have discussions with the state board or about the state board, let us know.
Well, I will say June 22nd, around 10:30, the State Board of Election are going to have a presentation. That would be probably an ideal time to have you all recognized. So yeah, if it works into your all schedule, please let me know. And we would be just thrilled to have you all there.
Well, that's wonderful.
June 22nd at 10 a.m.
Yes.
Perfect.
That'd be great.
Why don't, would the staff send?
I'll be there too.
That's great. Would the staff send out a notice of the time and place for all the board members?
Absolutely. Not a problem.
All right. That'd be great.
Mr. Chandler, Chairman Chandler,
Yes.
if I could real quick, I think I distracted the board with discussion of the letter about the rates, but we still need a motion from the board and approval for the setting of the rates as presented by Rachel Pointer.
Well, tell us what the rates are and what we need to vote on.
Rachel, will you give the rates?
Sure. Let me bring that page up again. For the FY21 rates, they increased the precinct payments from 200 to 255. The new registered voters was the same at 25 cents per new registrant. And they increased the registered voter, which is for personnel expenses, from 34 cents to 50 cents, which by statute cannot exceed 50 cents currently. So those would be at the maximum rates for FY21, and those would carry through to FY22. So it would be the same rates for FY21 and FY22.
Do we have any?
Has that taken into consideration the super precincts? You know, in the past, you might have had 15 precincts, and all of a sudden, due to the pandemic, we had 2 or 3, or in some cases 1. So I'm just curious how that breakdown is when you're looking at throughout the pandemic and with the super precincts. Does that affect the payments?
No, it would not. Think of the precincts have not been done away with. Precincts still exist within the county itself. A good example of that would be Fulton County. Fulton County has 11 precincts in it. Prior to the pandemic election, they had 4 locations, and they would put multiple precincts within the same location. So think about a super center in that same vein, where it's not a precinct in itself, it's just a voting location where all of the precincts reside. So the counties would still be reimbursed by precinct and the number of precincts they have, and that does not change.
And there may be at some point in the future, I think Member Sears makes a good point, which I think is aimed toward the method of calculation of how much money is sent down to the counties. And it may very well be that this is not the most efficient way to send money based on precincts, particularly when we have changes in the number or manner of the precincts. And maybe we can have that discussion in the future as well.
Well, and even over the years, counties have condensed precinct locations themselves, so that they've merged precincts together. So that's actually decreased the total amount of funding that they've received from the legislature as well.
Mr.
Chris,
Chairman, if I might just jump in.
Yes, go right ahead.
I agree wholeheartedly that a better method would probably be better for the state at large. We don't want to get into a point where we're basing it on precincts because of consolidation, but also we want to be acutely aware of potential growth. So being able to base that potentially on population or voter registration would be, I think, a more accurate way to do that. But that's something we can discuss as we move forward. And I think as we approach our legislators, we need to keep that very much at our forethought.
Well, I think maybe that's something that we ought to put on the agenda, Jared, in the future to look at the means used to set these rates and just have a discussion. I certainly don't have any preconceived notions about the best way to do it, but we ought to look at the issue. And I appreciate Member Sears bringing this matter up.
Chairman Chandler.
Yes, Member Lewis.
I believe it's tied to whether or not you have voting machines used for precincts that use voting machines. I think there are ones, I believe, that qualify for the reimbursement. So there is a factor which determines whether or not, and that's not the only one. I don't believe, but that is a discussion that the board probably would like to have, I think.
Yes, sir. Well, I think we would do well to discuss this as a group and see if we can come up with a method that gets done and make sure that all of the counties are appropriately funded. You know, it may be a discussion that takes place within our effort to get more funding in the future. All right, we have the rate that's set, as Ms. Pointer pointed out, and would anybody like to make a motion to accept that rate?
So moved.
A motion by Member
I'll
Lewis
second it.
and a second by Member Lane. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Very good. And now we move on to the next item. Would be a personnel discussion. Mr. Deering.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would like to bring to the attention of the board and ask for a vote on something today. I've reached out to the Ethics Commission to discuss this issue, and part of that discussion, being that it was a personnel issue, was whether or not this would be a closed session discussion. But Ethics has recommended that because it's not disciplinary, nor is it about termination or discipline, that it should be in an open setting for the full discussion and vote as well. So that being said, I'm bringing to the attention of the board today, I have been accepted to a graduate program. It is a one-year graduate program that is in Massachusetts. I would like to ask for permission from the board to be able to work remotely and to have a flexible schedule through that process, to kind of give the board some expectations of what we're looking at. I currently, as of today, have a little over 700 hours of both vacation and comp time that I would plan to use judiciously throughout that process. It's a 2-semester program that starts in July that I have to be in residence for. One of the things that I think makes this possible is that throughout the pandemic, we've seen that staff can be highly effective and still work remotely. Mr. Watson, our senior architect, has been working from home now, has been incredibly effective. The admin staff and the IT staff alone have accomplished a great deal of success working remotely throughout the pandemic. Our general counsel has done the same thing as well. So I've reached out to the Ethics Commission to ask to see if this was appropriate and if there was any conflict within this process. They've said, no, there is not. And that not only is there not, but it's fairly regular that state employees will work remotely while attending graduate school, whether that's a sabbatical, whether it's part-time or even full-time in some circumstances. So my plan right now currently is, if the board deems this acceptable, is to ask for the ability to have a flexible schedule. I would still make myself available to the staff daily. I would still make myself available for management meetings between Assistant Director Sellers, Taylor Brown, and Tom Watson, our management staff. And I would also be able to keep the board informed of what that process is looking like and month to month.
Well, I'd like to add that the timing on this is also good because we don't have an election for the rest of this year. Certainly, we will be working toward one at the beginning of next year, but that also helps in the timing of this. I think this is an excellent opportunity for Jared, and I, for one, would suggest to everybody that this be approved. We've got an executive director who I think did a tremendous job last year, juggling lots and lots and lots of balls that were all up in the air at the same time. And we have a tremendous and very capable staff to support him. So I would suggest that this be approved by the board. And certainly if you all have any questions, fire away.
What are your timelines, Jerry?
Classes would start in July on, I believe, July 6th, and they would go through May. So it will lead up to the next election cycle, but I think that's something that we can work towards. I think I'll have a better understanding of what the hour requirements will look like once we get started. I have some tools and resources that we can put in place to assist with that, but what I'm being told right now, so the program itself is a master's in public administration. It is a mid-career program, which means that it is tailored to working professionals. But obviously the board is my responsibility, and I take that seriously, which is why I'm bringing this to the board's attention as a public matter. But I will say that I think in some of the discussions I've had with several board members, that I will be upfront and honest about what that process looks like as we move forward, and giving you my expectations for both myself and my duties to the board.
Any other questions?
Jared, did we want to talk about where you were accepted to? Because I think that's pretty impressive and also important to this discussion.
That's a very good point, Member Whitehouse. This is quite an honor for our executive director.
Absolutely, that's not a problem. So I was accepted to the Harvard Kennedy School of Government to receive a master's in public administration, and I am honored to receive acceptance. And I'm looking forward to the work that we'll be working on, and specifically, working with other individuals that have had a lot of experience in government and have a lot of skill sets to pass on to students. I had a conversation with Secretary Adams, who is also a Harvard alum, and former Secretary of State Grayson, who's also a Harvard alum. And so I think there's a trend for Kentucky elections that elections administrators do well there, and I'm looking forward to it at the very, very minimum.
Well, I know as a board, we send definite congratulations on that. And, over the past couple of years, we've watched your staff, and we've watched Karen come on board as our assistant executive director. And so we have a lot of faith in her and the staff and you as well. So I absolutely think it's a great thing.
Thank you, Member White. I appreciate that.
Anybody else?
I agree with everything that's been said. I'm very proud of Jared, and I fully support this.
On behalf of the KCCA, Jared, we're just ecstatic for you. You and I've talked about this, and man, it's just a great honor for you, and we're just encouraging you to reach for great things, and obviously you're doing great at it. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. I will say definitively that I don't think I could be in this place if we did not have such an incredibly talented and dedicated staff. both from the administrative side to the IT side to the management side. One of the things that I think has given me the confidence that this can be successful is that we have put people in place like Karen, like Taylor, like Tom, that have the ability to help throughout this process. And that honestly, that the staff is filled with working professionals that know their job and they do it, incredibly well, and they're incredibly dedicated to this system. So, I don't think I could do that without their support and their help. And so, I can't do any of this without recognizing the qualities of the staff of the State Board of Elections.
That's great. I don't know whether we need to vote on or not.
I would say yes.
The ethics committee suggested that.
Yes, and I will. So the ethics. So I had an oral conversation with the ethics committee or commission staff. They will put something in writing that confirms what they've provided me orally. They said they would try to get that to me as soon as they can. They have a process within their own system that they'll get that back to us for. But I think it would be appropriate, just in the transparency of a public agency, to take a public vote to be able to say that you are providing me the opportunity to be able to do this, and the board consents to that process.
In that case, I will accept a motion to approve Jared's going to Harvard. Do I have a motion? Motion by Member Lewis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who was that, Member Brangers?
Yes.
All right. Motion by Member Lewis, second by Member Brangers. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Anybody opposed? All right, very good. Well done, Jared. Off you go. But we expect we're quite confident that you'll be able to handle your duties appropriately as we move forward, and we are looking forward to Karen moving up and shouldering even more of the load. I hope you're all right with this, Karen.
I think it's great. I think he'll do both very well.
Thank you, Karen.
All right, very good. Moving on, we have as our next agenda item, Secretary of State Adams. Michael?
Well, I think for the first time in the 16 months I've been here, I don't have a crisis to report on. So I'm gonna waive my report. I don't have anything to submit today. All is going swimmingly, and very happy about that.
Well, good for you. It helps that we don't have any elections, and you put in yeoman's work along with a number of other people in really great legislation passed, and you deserve a little bit of a break. All right, Jared, Executive Director's report.
So I wanted to bring to attention to the board a couple of things. I'll keep it brief. One, we'll be working with KCCA on Thursday. We'll be providing a training. During that training, we plan to discuss kind of what the expectations of 574 are and how that will play out. One of the key factors of 574 is that the counties will have to submit elections plans similar to what they did during the primary and general elections.
Would you explain to the public what 574 is?
Certainly. So 574 was House Bill 574 that was passed at the end of session. I am proud to say that former Chairman Branscombe, who is now a state legislator, along with legislators Decker and Tipton, worked closely with Secretary Adams, the board and board staff, as well as the KCCA, to provide legislation that would open up access and also provide transparency and security. So a lot of the mechanisms that we use to have successful elections during the general and primary elections were codified into statute permanently. So that will entail 3 days of early voting, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, along with 1 day on election day and Tuesday. It gives the counties flexibility to utilize a supercenter model. While it doesn't require it, it still provides for that ability for counties to do that. And that's honestly, that's one of the major things that we want to discuss, is what that will look like, to making sure that the clerks are providing election plans that are making it easier for voters to vote. I think that's one of the primary things, but there also comes with cost saving mechanisms that will also be added in that legislation. I think we want to be able to support the clerks in providing some of those cost saving benefits, but also making sure that we're doing it to the benefit of the voter. We also will be codifying in the statute drop boxes, the use of drop boxes, as well as the absentee application portal. Voters will still have to have excuses, as they have always had excuses to be able to cast an absentee ballot, including age, disability, being out of the county on election day. But that portal makes it incredibly easier for a voter as well as the clerk. And it also adds in a great deal of security and transparency into the system. So in a nutshell, that while there are a lot of different things involved in House Bill 574, that's kind of the highlights of that. So at the KCCA meeting on Thursday, we plan to discuss a little bit what our expectations are, giving the counties some idea of what we'll be looking for when they submit those plans. Obviously, we're a year away from our next election, so it kind of seems, well, that seems a little soon. But right now, county clerks are actually in the process of looking at how their elections are going to play out in next May, so that they can purchase election equipment right now. So they'll kind of need to know what that basis looks like so that they can start to procure that election equipment. So we'll be working closely with the KCCA throughout that process. We will also be working on some of those regulations. I know we spoke briefly about that at the last meeting, but we are going to actually expedite that regulation drafting process. We are going to ask for the secretary for your support. We're going to ask for your staff's support as we go through some of those things that are specific to items that I think more centric to the Secretary of State's office. So we're going to ask for your support and help through that process. But part of the reason why we want to push this through, and I think initially we were all thinking, oh gosh, we don't have an election until next May. But the reality is that's not true. There is very, very good likelihood that we will have some type of special election, at the very minimum, a wet dry vote or a local option election at the county level. And the county clerks are going to need directions on how to operate those elections come July 15th, when the law is put into effect. So we're going to try to get those to the board as soon as we can. Taylor and Karen and Tom and I had a meeting most of all of yesterday, discussing some of these factors and kind of what priorities that we needed to concentrate on those at. So we'll provide those to the board, give you an ample time to be able to review them, ask questions. Same with the secretary as well. We'll provide those to you as well for any feedback. But hopefully our goal is to provide the board some idea of what those recommendations are going to be for regulations for a vote by next month. The goal being that if we can have them voted out in June, that they can be submitted to LRC for review, and that ultimately they can be on the docket for approval. Now, the process that we've been recommended to us is that we actually submit in parallel regulations that will ultimately serve as the regulations for 574 that are required for us, but we'll also submit the exact same regulations in an emergency fashion, so that by at least the end of July, the governor will have an ability to sign those and approve them once they've gone through LRC. That way, in case there is an election that takes place within that interim period before the normal reg process has taken hold, that the counties will have direction and be able to effectuate a safe and secure election. Any questions on that topic?
I just want to chime in for a second. I agree 100%. Thanks for the invitation. We'd love to collaborate on that. We've actually had 2 wet dry votes already in 2021. One, I think, in Davis County, one in Gallatin County. And under the law, those elections were held under the old rules, under the 1891 rules instead of the current rules. Fortunately, everything was done in a way that ensured public safety, but we reverted back to the old rules, and obviously that was confusing for voters. And so the sooner we can get this implemented, the better. The law takes effect HB 574 takes effect on June 28th, I believe. So I do think that we'll have this in place as a law before we have another special election, if we do have one. But just a couple quick points. Number one, this is a question I don't know the answer. Are we able to pass regulations for 574 before 574 formally takes effect on June 28th? Do we need to promulgate them but then have an effective date of June 28th? I don't know the answer to that. I welcome someone who does. And then a second comment. It might be good if time permits, maybe not by the next meeting, but maybe later this year, for us to assess some of our other regulations. For example, if y'all remember, one of the regulations that we had to vote to suspend is one that says if an election is delayed under the governor and secretary of state jointly agreeing to delay an election. Currently, our regulations say that no absentee voting is extended. Only in-person voting can happen. Obviously, that was the exact opposite of what we needed for our primary last year when we delayed that. So I do think as time permits, maybe this year with no elections, it's a good time for us to assess some of our existing regulations, maybe update those. Obviously, I think getting more clarity on 574 implementation of that is the higher priority, though, just because there's so many question marks about how we administer that.
I think those are tremendously well taken points, and I think this is an appropriate time for me to pipe in and say that we have had an extraordinary amount of success here in Kentucky in the last couple of years, really. And a lot of that credit goes to you, Mr. Secretary. A lot of it goes to the governor. A lot of it goes to the board and the members of the board, and a great deal of it goes to the county clerks. But our election last year was incredibly successful. The passage of this legislation has been incredibly successful, and the bipartisan nature of all of it, in my judgment, is what makes it successful and has made it successful. It's just incredible when the rest of the country seems to be melting down over partisanship. We in Kentucky are actually working very effectively in the area of elections. And we ought to keep that going and see if we can put regulations together with the same bipartisan approach. I'm very bullish on where we have been and where we're going. And I just want to thank everybody for their part in it. We appreciate it very, very much. Anybody else want to discuss this issue? All right. Jared, is there anything the board needs to do relative to this?
Right now, no. Like I said, the staff will continue to compile where we need to be on this. And to Secretary Adams, one of Secretary Adams' questions about can we promulgate? Technically, I don't think we will be promulgating them. I think what the board is approving them for submission to LRC so that they can be accepted throughout that process that LRC has set up for the reg process. But we can check into that to verify and make sure as well. I'll have Taylor jump on that.
Probably be a good idea for you to establish a timeline to see that process gets moving sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and that we've so the July 15th date that I brought up, that's the date that we've been told that we need to be submitted to LRC for that process to be adequately in the pipeline for them to go through that process. But we'll continue to keep the board updated, and hopefully prior to next meeting we'll have a good idea of what we need to get done and the timeline in which it'll get done. And like I said, we'll continue to work with both the board as well as Secretary Adams and the KCCA throughout that process.
But that answers, it sounds like one of the main questions, practically speaking anyway. You're looking at July 15th as your target date.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Anybody else have any questions on this matter? Hearing none, our next item is other business. Is there
Mr.
any?
Chandler.
Yes.
Sorry, Chairman Chen, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking the board if there was questions on the last topic. There was one other thing I wanted to bring to the board's attention, if I could, real briefly. Karen and I both had a meeting with the governor's senior advisor to bring up financial questions. So one of them being, can the governor's office provide funding for election equipment down to the counties, and where some of those funding sources might be able to come from. We're also asking that they fill and stopgap some of our match money. So we had to use a lot of our match money that we were provided in the last fiscal budget cycle that was originally appropriated for security grant dollars. We had to use them for the CARES Act to get us through the election. So we're requesting that the governor provide us with resources to be able to utilize the match for our security grant dollars. That meeting went really well. Obviously, no promises were made, but we were optimistic about the call, and we're submitting a document memo to the governor's staff and OMBB to start that process as well.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, are you ready to move on? Next item is other business. Do we have any? Hearing none, it is time for us to move into executive session on a security matter. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
That's motion by member Brangers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by member Skolnick. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Thank you. We will move into executive session now. And after the executive session, we will come back for the purpose of setting the next meeting date and any other business that may result from